Hey everyone, and welcome. I'm your curious science buddy, and today we've got an absolutely fascinating explainer lined up for you. We're going to tackle one of the most mind-blowing ideas in all of biology, how living things actually change over time. If you've ever looked at the crazy variety of life on our planet and thought, how in the world did all this get here? Well, you're in exactly the right place. We're diving into natural selection and the big overarching concept of evolution. Get ready, because this is quite literally the key to understanding the natural world.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here's our step-by-step roadmap for today's lesson. First up, the mystery of change. Then, Darwin and the Beagle, followed by what is natural selection. After that, we'll hit the 4 conditions for survival, see natural selection in action, and wrap it all up with the evidence for evolution.
Section 1. The mystery of change.
To kick things off, I want to challenge you to really think about the animals you know and, why they look the way they do. Like, have you ever seen a giraffe and wondered, why on earth do they have those ridiculously long necks? Or think about the freezing Arctic. Why do polar bears have thick white fur instead of, say, brown fur or even no fur at all? Take a second. What actual purpose do you think these super specific features serve?
Well, it comes down to one thing: survival. Giraffes didn't get long necks to look cool or to scare off predators. They have them to reach leaves on the tallest trees. Without that neck, they'd literally starve. And those polar bears, that thick white fur acts as the ultimate winter coat, and it completely camouflages them against the snow, which is absolutely crucial for hunting. There's a life-or-death reason for these treats. Organisms are uniquely, perfectly suited to their environments.
Section 2. Darwin and the Beagle. So to understand how these amazing traits actually develop, we have to talk about change and the brilliant scientists who figured it all out. First, let's define a huge important word: evolution. Evolution is simply the gradual change in living things over a very long period of time, usually spanning across many generations. Now, I really want to emphasize that word gradual. This isn't some instant superhero mutation in one lifetime. It happens super slowly. Think about dogs, right? They evolved from wolves. That didn't happen overnight. It took generations upon generations to get the incredible variety of dogs we see running around today.
And the guy who finally connected all the dots was Charles Darwin. Back in 1831, when he was just a 22-year-old guy, Darwin hopped on a ship called the HMS Beagle. The ship was really just supposed to map the coast of South America, but for Darwin, it was a massive 5-year road trip to collect plants, animals, and fossils. His most famous stop? The Galapagos Islands. While he was hanging out there, he noticed something super weird. The local birds, called finches, and the giant tortoises looked kind of similar, but they had really distinct differences in their beaks and shells depending on which specific island they lived on. He spent decades, literally decades, analyzing this and finally dropped his groundbreaking book on the origin of species in 1859.
Section 3. What is natural selection?
So Darwin realized evolution was happening. But how? What's the engine driving it? Let's talk about the biological mechanism he discovered. It's called natural selection. This is a natural process where organisms with favorable traits, basically physical features that give them an edge in their specific environment, are the ones most likely to survive, reproduce, and pass those exact traits on to their babies. What's really interesting about this slide is that nature itself is doing the selecting. If you've got the best traits for where you live, you make it. If your traits are a bad match, you get eliminated. It's nature's ultimate, ongoing survival test.
Section 4. 4 conditions for survival.
Let's really unpack the mechanics here. For natural selection to actually work, there are 4 critical rules or conditions that have to happen in nature. Think of them as the 4 gears of evolution: variation, inheritance, competition, and adaptation. We're going to break these down one by one to make sure you totally get how this process works.
Condition number 1 is variation, and here's why it's a game changer. Imagine a snowy, freezing environment. If every single rabbit living there was pitch black, well, they'd stand out like a sore thumb. Predators would easily spot them and, eat them. But populations naturally have variations, differences in their traits. So if a white rabbit pops up in that same snowy field, it blends right in and survives. Variation is absolutely vital because it gives a species options. When the environment is dangerous, having different traits scattered throughout the population means somebody might just have the lucky ticket to survive.
Condition number 2 is inheritance. It's awesome if a rabbit has white fur that saves its life today, but for evolution to keep moving forward, that trait has to be passed on. These survival traits aren't just skills you learn, they're hardwired into genetics. The survivors pass their winning genes down to their babies. Over time, those winning traits become super common in the population, and the traits that don't work, they slowly fade away.
All right, condition number 3, competition. Here's the harsh reality of nature. Organisms produce way more offspring than the environment can actually support. Resources are strictly limited. There isn't an endless buffet of food, water, or shelter, or even sunlight for plants. Because of this, everything is forced to compete. The individuals with the most favorable traits win that competition. The ones who can't compete, they simply don't survive to reproduce.
And the final condition is adaptation. And adaptation is a specific physical feature or even a behavior that boosts an organism's chances of surviving in a very specific place. Take a bone-dry desert, for example. A cactus with a thick, fleshy stem is perfectly adapted because it stores water like a tank. But a plant with thin, delicate leaves? It loses its water instantly and die off. And adaptation is basically the winning trait that allows an organism to completely conquer its habitat.
Section 5. Natural selection in action.
Now that we've got the rules down, variation, inheritance, competition, and adaptation, let's look at this in the real world. Check out this incredible local example from right here in the Philippines, the Tuwilis of Taal Lake in Batangas. Historically, these guys were saltwater fish. But then, a massive volcanic eruption happened, completely isolating their body of water, which eventually turned into a freshwater lake. Talk about an extreme environment change. A lot of fish probably died, but some naturally had variations that let them handle the changing water. They survived, bred, and passed those exact traits on. They literally adapted from saltwater to freshwater. If they hadn't, they'd be 100% extinct today.
And let's connect this right back to Darwin's famous Galapagos finches. Remember those? Darwin realized that finches on different islands all shared a common ancestor, but their beaks had evolved to look wildly different based entirely on what food was available. If a finch had to eat hard seeds, it developed a thick, heavy beak for crushing. If it fed on cactus flowers, it ended up with a long, thin beak. Insect catchers? Small, sharp, pointed beaks. The environment set the menu, and natural selection made sure that only the birds with the perfect tools for the job survived to pass on their genes.
Here's another total classic that'll blow your mind: the peppered moths during the Industrial Revolution. Before factories, tree bark was naturally light-colored. So light-colored moths were perfectly camouflaged, while the rare dark moths stuck out and got eaten by birds. But then the Industrial Revolution hits. Factories start pumping out literal tons of black soot, darkening all the trees. Suddenly, the environment completely flipped. Now, the light moths were the ones getting eaten, and the dark moths were the ones blending in. The whole population quickly shifted to become mostly dark. It perfectly proves that when an environment changes, what counts as a good trait changes right along with it.
And hey, this isn't just stuff from history books. It is happening right this second in modern medicine. Think about bacteria and antibiotics. Because of natural genetic variation, just a tiny handful of bacteria in a population might naturally be resistant to an antibiotic drug. When you take that medicine, it wipes out all the normal bacteria. But those few resistant guys, they survive. And with all the competition wiped out, they multiply like crazy, passing the resistance on to millions of new bacteria. It's natural selection happening in real time, making infections tougher and tougher for us to treat.
Section 6. The evidence for evolution.
We've seen the mechanics and we've seen the real-world examples. Let's transition to our final section and summarize the hard scientific proof that backs all of this up. Because scientists aren't just guessing here, they have mountains of evidence. First up, fossils. These give us a physical, historical record showing exactly how organisms have changed over millions of years, including species that don't even exist anymore. Then there's DNA. By looking at genetics, we can see mind-blowing similarities in the code between wildly different species, proving we share common ancestors. And finally, comparative anatomy, looking at bone structures across different animals and seeing undeniable similarities that point straight back to a shared evolutionary family tree.
So, the crucial point is really understanding what we actually mean when we say survival of the fittest. It's a famous phrase, but people almost always get it wrong. They think it means the biggest, the fastest, or the most aggressive animal wins. Nope. In science, fittest simply means the best adapted. That white moth wasn't pumping iron to be stronger than the dark moth. It just fit the environment better. The Talwillis fish weren't tough. They just had the right biology for fresh water. It is entirely about how well you fit into the specific world around you.
We've covered a ton of ground in this explainer today, all the way from Darwin's boat trip to the nitty-gritty of how natural selection actually works. But before we go, I want to leave you with a big, thought-provoking question. Our planet is currently going through massive climate change, right? It's getting noticeably warmer every single year. Knowing what you now know about variation, inheritance, competition, and adaptation, are humans evolving right now to adapt to this changing environment?
Take some time to think about how we might be changing and how the unstoppable rules of nature apply to us too. Keep questioning, keep observing, and keep learning. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll see you next time.